I was like, cool. And he taught me things like halt. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. When you're halting, when you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, and the human brain always anticipates the worst case scenario. I threw that out there. Keep in mind, I had previously never talked about being molested. Not to anyone, not even my wife. That happened, I would probably for a year and a half, 2 years.
2 years?
Yeah.
So
it started off when I was 4.
4 to 6.
4 to 6, yeah.
Did you ever tell your parents about that?
They still don't know. My parents are still alive. And
they still don't know.
Yeah, I don't want them to carry the weight of that now, to carry the guilt of that.
I understand that.
And I didn't tell anyone until I was 38 years old. I had this massive panic attack at 38. I'm 49 now, so this was 11 years ago. And it just like work related. I was building my businesses, my companies, and I was in massive debt because got myself into a lot of debt, maxing out credit cards, refinancing our house, and had this massive panic attack. And so I ended up working with a therapist. Well, doctors put me on Xanax, and I didn't like how I felt on Xanax. I just felt numb, no creativity, no desire to work. So I asked the doctor, I was like, hey man, yeah, I don't feel anxious, but I also don't feel any desire to work. And this is not good considering I'm in debt and I'm trying to build a company. He said, well, have you tried talk therapy? I'm like, that's for broken people. He says, well, good therapists can give you tools to deal with your stress and your anxiety. So I found a good therapist and I started working with him. And he said, yeah, within 3 or 4 sessions, we can give you some tools. I was like, cool. And he taught me things like halt. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. When you're halting, when you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, an alcoholic is more likely to go back to booze. A drug addict is more likely to relapse to drugs. You're more likely to have your panic attack when you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, when you're stressed out. And so take care of those things. Basically, it's self-care. And then he also taught me that anxiety is anticipation of future pain and that action alleviates anxiety. It's like, oh, okay, anxiety is anticipation of future pain. Yeah, I see why I had that anxiety attack. I was anticipating this with my business partner that I was having a fallout with. I was anticipating that with this thing, with my debt that I owed that was coming up. There's all these things you anticipate. And the human brain always anticipates the worst case scenario. Like, I need to go up to my business partner and tell him that we shouldn't work together anymore. And he's going to hate me. We're going to end up fighting. It's going to be expensive. When in reality, when I really did talk to him about it, he was like, you know what? I felt the same way, man. And you're right. We should part ways. Let's figure out the finances. It wasn't anything like I anticipated, but I had so much anxiety for months, right? And so anyway, Kevin, my therapist, Kevin Downing, he gives me these tools. And I know it sounds stupid, but when I was hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, I just addressed them. I would sleep. I took pride in, I'm not going to sleep until I get all my emails done. So it'd be like 1 a.m, I'm still grinding away at emails. Or I'm hungry, but I'm not going to get up off my laptop to eat. Or I'm thirsty, I'll get water after I do these things. And you end up kind of almost getting into the red, not even realizing it, until you either snap at your wife, snap at your kids, snap at your employees, or end up having some kind of a panic attack where you just melt down, right? And so when I had that first of several panic attacks, bro, it felt like a heart attack. Like my throat started to close up, my arms were tingling. And I realized like this is not, this is more than just feeling anxious. I thought I was having a heart attack. Went to the doctor. He said, your heart's fine, but we're going to put you on Xanax. That led me to Kevin Downing, the therapist. He's like, 3-4 sessions. I'm going to give you some tools. You do these things. Have the conversations instead of anticipating a negative outcome. Like, have the tough conversations. In fact, the title Man Up came from, I just had this little mantra in my head. Dude, just man up and have that conversation. Man up and do that thing, instead of constantly putting it off like I used to and then anticipating a negative outcome and then having a panic attack or flipping out on my wife. Like, I'm not proud to say that. That's how it was. And so 4 sessions in, Kevin's like, dude, how's your anxiety levels? I'm like, Kevin, I feel great. I feel like I've got control of everything. I'm having conversations in advance. I've got my halt under control. Like, this is great. I'm sleeping. I'm rested. Self-care. I'm literally signing the credit card receipt. For the last session with him. I'm standing at his doorway. It's on the 2-story building, office building. And it was a room about this size, and we would just sit across from each other just like this. Except when I'm seated on his couch, to my right is a window, and I could see my SUV. I had a GMC Yukon, and I could always see it out the window. And then to my left is his door. I'm standing at his door, signing the receipt, and he goes, "Hey, by the way, since this is your last session, is there anything else you want to talk about?" I was like, "Nope, everything's fine, Kevin. Peace. I'm ready to go." I'm very outcome driven, so he helped me deal with my anxiety. I'm good to go. He goes, "What about your parents?" I was like, "Listen, Kevin, my dad was a communist. He was heavy-handed, and he would beat me a lot. You know, he would just get very angry. But I've moved past that. Plus, what happened to me as a kid in Armenia was even worse than the beatings that my dad gave me." I threw that out there. Keep in mind, I had previously never talked about being molested. Not to anyone, not even my wife. In fact, I would hate when my wife would come behind me and try and hug me from behind.
Really?
It would trigger me. And so I would just turn around very quickly and just hold her that way, right? And she'd be like, "What's the matter with you?" I'm like, "Nothing, just hug me here and not there," right? Because in your head, the last thing you want to do is talk about that, share that, have to bring it back out. I'd rather just avoid it. And I thought I dealt with it. So I told Kevin, I go, "Plus what happened to me as a kid in Armenia was worse than the beatings my dad gave me." He's like, "Well, what happened?" Dude, I just started bawling. Grown-ass man, 38 years old, standing at his doorway, got a pen and a receipt in my hand, and I can't move. I'm literally petrified. I'm bawling, and I'm looking out his window at my truck, at my SUV, and he's like, were you abused?" I nod my head yes, because words aren't coming out of my mouth. "Was it sexual abuse?" Nod my head yes. "Were you raped?" Nod my head no. "Were you molested?" Nod my head yes. "Was it by a babysitter?" No. And finally, the words rolled out by two older boys. Just kind of rolled right off my tongue. And I'm just crying, man, looking at my cars, just thinking like, if there's any way I can just fling myself through that pane glass window to get to my car and not have this conversation. But I'm stuck. I can't go down his staircase. I can't fling myself out his window right now. I don't want this conversation to happen, but I'm stuck here. And I realize now in hindsight, in those 4 weeks, Kevin built such trust and rapport with me. He's older, so he's probably in his 60s, gray hair, kind of looks like Einstein with no eyebrows. It's the only best way I could describe him. And very kind soul. In those 4 weeks, he built such rapport, trust with me that for the first time ever, I don't know, felt safe. I felt okay. I felt not judged to say that. And but now that it's coming out and I'm crying, I don't want to be there. I want to either backtrack down the staircase, fling myself out his window. I can't do either. And when I say it was two older boys, and he goes, "I'm sorry." Now I'm crying even more, like snot and everything. I'm like, this is nuts, man. Like the internal conversation is suck it up, clean yourself up, and leave. Like you're done. This is your fourth and final session with him. He goes, "Are you okay?" I said, "Kevin, what happened to that little boy I've dealt with." He says, "Can I tell you something?" I said, "Sure." He says, "Can you say, I've healed?" I start crying again. And this, like the internal conversation is like, I hate this man right now. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be talking about this. But it also feels like I need to be. Like he's the guy I need to be talking to about this. Mm-hmm. And so he goes, "Can you say that?" And I just shook my head. No. And he goes, "I want to let you know that the way you said it is called disassociation. In other words, what happened to that little boy? I've disassociated myself." And he said, disassociation is the first step into creating multiple personalities, into having a multiple personality disorder. Now I'm like, I can't, like, all right, I come here for dealing with anxiety. I'm trying to build this like big franchise business. I'm in debt. Now we just broke the seal on this thing that happened to me when I'm like 4 or 5 years old, right?
Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Shawn Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.